It always starts the same way. Someone says something, a look, a word, a silence, and you feel it, that old wound opening again. Your chest tightens, your thoughts scatter. You try to breathe, but your body has already left the room, because something in you learned long ago that presence is unsafe. And now, even the smallest trigger can rip open decades of hidden pain. They call it overreacting. You call it just being sensitive. But it's not that. It's not about this moment. It never was. This pain, this collapse, it doesn't belong to the now. It belongs to the past. It belongs to the child you buried inside your adult life, the one you swore you'd never be again. And yet here you are, shrinking, apologizing, proving, pleading. Here you are trying to convince the world that you're good enough to keep safe. But the world doesn't care. The world doesn't see the scar beneath the skin. It doesn't see the echo behind your eyes when they raise their voice. It doesn't hear the scream you've trained to sound like a whisper. You call it being strong. Carl Jung called it the shadow. The part of you had to exile just to survive. And the truth is you're still surviving, not living, performing, playing a role you didn't write, in a life you don't own, reading lines that were handed to you by fear, by trauma, by generations too broken to speak. You say you're fine, you smile, you go to work, you check your phone, you scroll, you try to stay ahead of the pain. But late at night when the world gets quiet and the noise fades and you're left with only your reflection, that's when it hits. The sadness, the rage, the ache with no name. That's when the mask slips and you see it. You see how much of your life has been lived in reaction to pain you never healed. You see how often you say yes when you want to scream no. You see how carefully you edit your truth to stay lovable. You see how much you've built not out of desire, but out of defense, and suddenly it becomes unbearable. Because you know what it's like to lose yourself. You know what it's like to turn off your own voice just to keep the peace. You know what it's like to carry the shame of someone else's violence. You know what it's like to be hurt and still feel responsible for protecting the person who hurt you. That's the cruelty of trauma. It doesn't just steal your safety, it steals your story. It teaches you to see life not as something to be lived, but something to survive. And you've survived. God, you've survived. But what does it cost? Your sleep, your trust, your softness, your ability to stand in front of someone you love and say, this is me, I will not leave myself to keep you. Because deep down, that's the fear, isn't it? That if you stop abandoning yourself, everyone else will do the same. And that's the lie. The ancient, bone-deep lie. That you must be broken to be loved. That you must betray your instincts to feel safe. That you must remain small so others don't leave. But the truth, the one no one ever told you, the one they couldn't tell you, because they never learned it themselves, is this. Nothing can truly hurt you if you stop hurting yourself first. Nothing anyone says can destroy you if your own voice no longer whispers they're right. Nothing anyone takes can leave you empty if you are no longer starving for permission. Nothing anyone does can shatter you if you are no longer holding yourself together with lies. Because the real wound is not what happened to you. The real wound is what you began to believe because of it. That you're not enough, that you're too much, that your pain makes you dangerous, that your truth makes you difficult, that your no makes you unworthy, and you believed it. Not because you were weak, but because you were wise. Because your nervous system made a choice, adapt or die. So you adapted. You became agreeable. You became helpful. You became the peacemaker, the fixer, the achiever, the ghost. You gave up pieces of yourself just to feel a little bit safer in a world that never was. And now, years later, your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. The flinch, the freeze. The moment you learned that love could turn violent, that presence could disappear, that being seen was dangerous. And yet even through all of that, something in you survived. Something in you never gave up. And that part of you, it's still here. It's the part that watches quietly when you betray yourself. It's the part that aches when you pretend. It's the part that screams in the silence, I want to come home. But to come home, you have to stop running. Not from them, from yourself. You have to stop being afraid of your own shadow. Stop labeling your anger as bad. Stop numbing your grief with productivity. Stop avoiding your truth just to be digestible. Because the truth is this, you are not broken. You are buried. Beneath the mask. Beneath the roles. Beneath the shame. You are there, alive, waiting. And the only thing that can hurt you now is your refusal to turn inward and look. The pain will keep coming until you learn what it came to teach. That you are not here to be safe. You are here to be free. You are not here to stay small. You are here to remember your power. And power, real power, does not come from pretending you're invincible. It comes from knowing you're not, and loving yourself anyway. It comes from looking your shadow in the eye and saying, "You can come with me. I'm not afraid of you anymore." Because that's the moment everything changes, not when the pain disappears, but when it no longer defines you. When it no longer dictates the choices you make at 2 a.m. When it no longer writes the script for who you're allowed to become. That's the moment you stop being the child at the mercy of ghosts and start becoming the adult who can hold them. It's not pretty. It's not cinematic. It won't look like some spiritual awakening on a beach at sunrise. It'll look like you standing in the middle of your kitchen, staring into nothing, whispering the words, "I can't keep living like this," and meaning it. It'll look like crying when you finally say no and no one even notices. It'll look like rage when you realize you spent half your life saying yes just to survive. It'll look like silence when you refuse to explain your boundary for the first time. And it'll feel like death. Because part of you is dying, the part that was trained to be pleasing, palatable, perfect, the part that believes you only exist if someone else approves. But there's a deeper part, older, wilder, closer to the bone. And that part isn't afraid. That part remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. That part has been waiting, in the tension, in the triggers, in the heartbreaks that cracked you open wide enough to finally hear the truth beneath the pain. You were never meant to be safe. You were meant to be whole. But wholeness requires that you reclaim the parts you've disowned. The rage, the grief, the fire, the shadow that doesn't care who stays, doesn't ask for permission, doesn't wear masks to keep the peace. Jung called it individuation, not becoming something better, becoming what was buried, not fixing your wounds, integrating them, owning them, letting them speak without shame. Because your wounds are not mistakes, they're maps. Maps that lead you inward. Maps that trace the exact coordinates of your soul. You've been taught to avoid them, to cover them with affirmation, with discipline, with performance. But a wound unacknowledged becomes a prison, and you've been living in that prison far too long. A prison with no walls, just expectations. Be good, be strong, be quiet, be easy to love. You wore those commandments like armor. You called it maturity, you called it spirituality, but it was fear. Fear that if anyone saw your chaos, they would leave. Fear that if anyone saw your darkness, they would run. But what if the opposite is true? What if your power isn't in your light? What if it's in your shadow? The part of you that still cries when no one's watching. The part of you that rages against a life you never chose. The part of you that remembers what it felt like to be helpless and decided, never again. That part doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to protect you. It wants to lead you. But only if you stop rejecting it. Only if you stop pretending it's not there. Because nothing you heal will ever hurt you again in the same way. It may revisit. It may whisper. But it will not command you. Not when you've stood in the fire and chosen to stay. Not when you've collapsed and crawled back anyway. Not when you've seen yourself in the mirror, trembling, broken, bloodied from the inside out, and still said, "I will not leave you." That is the moment no one can take from you. Not betrayal, not loss, not silence. Because once you faced yourself and didn't flinch, nothing out there can unmake you. The power isn't in your ability to control what happens. It's in your capacity to meet what happens without abandoning yourself. And that's what they never taught you. They taught you to smile through the storm. They taught you to manifest your way out of pain. They taught you to stay positive while your heart screamed for truth. But you don't need positivity. You need presence. You don't need mantras. You need honesty. You don't need to escape your pain. You need to become the one who can hold it. Not fix it, not erase it. Hold it. Because the pain isn't the enemy. The disconnection is. The shame, the silence. The belief that you're only lovable when you're polished, curated, healed. That belief is the true wound. The one passed down from generations who had no choice but to bury their sorrow. The one etched into your nervous system before you even had words to name it. And now you're the one who has to break the cycle. Not by becoming perfect, but by becoming real. By learning to sit with the fire and say, I see you. You don't scare me anymore. because the fire was never trying to burn you. It was trying to bring you back to the source, to the moment you lost your voice, to the moment you said, "I'm fine," but you weren't, to the moment your body knew the truth, but your mind couldn't afford to listen. And now you can afford to listen. Now you can afford to feel. Now you can afford to stop pretending you're invincible and start becoming intimate with your own vulnerability. That's the paradox no one tells you. You don't become untouchable by building walls. You become untouchable by going so deep into your own humanity that nothing on the outside can shake you. Not because you're numb, because you're present, fully, finally, here. And in that presence you learn the truth. Nothing can hurt you anymore. If you stop hurting yourself first, that's where it always begins. Not with them, not with what they did, not with the moment they left, or the silence they never broke, or the love they dangled like a prize you had to bleed for. It begins in the moment you decided they were right, the moment you picked up their rejection and made it your identity, the moment you turned your pain into proof that you're not enough, proof that you're unlovable, proof that your very existence is something that must be constantly justified. That's the deeper violence. Not just the trauma itself, but the belief it planted, that somehow you deserved it, that if you had been smarter, quieter, better, maybe they would have stayed, maybe they would have listened, maybe they wouldn't have hurt you. And that belief, once it takes root, becomes your gospel. You don't even realize it's there. You just keep attracting the same people. You just keep ending up in the same conversations. You just keep bending yourself to fit into places that were never designed to hold someone like you. And when it fails, when they walk, when it all crumbles, you don't get angry. You get ashamed. You go inside, you tighten, you say, "It's me." And it was you, but not in the way you think. It was the you who left yourself first, the you who became an accomplice in your own disappearance, the you who learned how to be lovable by being absent. Do you understand how deep that goes? Do you understand the kind of betrayal it takes to teach a child that love and self-erasure are the same thing? Because once you learn it, once your nervous system wires itself to that equation, you stop looking for love and start looking for approval. You stop asking, what do I want? And start asking, what do they need from me? You stop living and start managing perception, managing tone, managing energy in every room, reading every face, translating every pause into a threat. And that's the thing about survival. It doesn't ask if it makes you happy. It asks only one question. Will this keep me safe? And you've been surviving ever since, building a personality out of what won't get you abandoned, constructing an identity around what won't get you hurt. But here's the shadow truth. You still got hurt, you still got abandoned, you still got blamed, you still got overlooked by the very people you were bleeding to protect. So what did it cost you, and what did it buy? A fragile peace, a temporary safety, a mask so heavy you can barely breathe through it anymore. You wear it to work, you wear it with friends, you wear it in bed when you pretend you're fine as your soul whispers, "This isn't it." You even wear it in healing spaces. You learn the right language, you say all the enlightened things. But healing isn't how many books you've read. Healing is when you finally stop gaslighting yourself. When you finally stop saying, "It wasn't that bad." When you finally stop defending the people who shattered you. When you stop trying to be so evolved that you bypass your own grief. Because your grief is sacred. Your rage is sacred. Your numbness is sacred. They're not problems to be fixed. They're signals. They're the soul's language. And they only scream when you've ignored their whispers for too long. But you don't listen. Not yet. Because listening means you'll have to change. Listening means you'll have to confront the ways you've participated in your own pain. The ways you've kept people around who confirmed your unworthiness. The ways you've mistaken chemistry for trauma familiarity. The ways you've performed healing without ever letting the truth touch your bones. You want safety without transformation. But safety is transformation. It's the radical act of becoming the home you never had, and that means tearing it all down. The false self, the polite no, the filtered voice, the curated "I'm fine." It means burning the script you were given, even if it leaves you with nothing but ashes. Because from those ashes, something sacred begins to rise. Not a better version of you, not a shinier, more acceptable, more productive self, just you, unperformed, unedited, unafraid to be whole. And that's the truth they never told you, that your power was never in your perfection. It was in your permission. to be angry, to be messy, to be terrifyingly real. Because when you are real, you are no longer at the mercy of those who only loved your performance. You no longer collapse when they withdraw. You no longer beg when they ghost. You no longer chase when they can't meet you. You just remain, rooted, present, unshakable, because the hurt doesn't disappear. That's not how this works, but it loses its power when it's not compounded by your own betrayal. That's the healing. When the wound reopens and you don't abandon yourself this time. When the trigger comes and you don't shapeshift. When the fear rises and you don't run, you stay. And in that staying, something ancient inside you exhales because you finally returned to the body, to the breath, to the truth beneath the survival. And nothing they say can break you anymore, not because you're cold, but because you're whole. And when you are whole, pain still comes, but it doesn't steal your name. They can misunderstand you, they can walk away. They can say things that once would have shattered you. But now it lands differently. It lands, and it dissolves. Because you're not holding out your hands anymore, begging to be seen. You're not contorting your body into shapes just to be accepted. You're not performing grief to be comforted, or silencing anger to be kept. You are no longer trying to be palatable. You are no longer trying to be healed in ways that erase your humanity. You are no longer trying to escape the parts of you that feel too raw, too loud, too inconvenient. You are looking at them now, and they're looking back. And in their eyes you see the child, the one who waited behind the silence, the one who never stopped believing you'd return. And for the first time you don't flinch. You don't apologize. You don't try to fix her or mold him or parent them into being less. You just kneel down beside the ache. You just sit with it as if it's holy, because it is. All of it. The shame, the fury, the longing that curled around your ribs like smoke and never left. You are sitting in the fire now, not because you've been cast into it, but because you've chosen to walk through it, awake. And something happens there. Not an epiphany, not a breakthrough. Just this quiet, impossible knowing you are no longer afraid of yourself. You are no longer afraid of the storm you carry. You are no longer afraid of the memories that once made you feel like a stranger inside your own skin. You are no longer afraid of the rage that says, I deserved better. You are no longer afraid of the love that says, I will never abandon you again, because that's what the pain was always trying to give you. Not punishment, not proof of your brokenness. An invitation to see yourself, to stop negotiating for worthiness, to stop waiting for permission to exist, to stop deferring to others to define what your heart already knows. That you are not here to survive your life. You are here to inhabit it, fully, wildly, without compromise. Even when it's hard, especially then, because there is something holy about standing in front of the very thing that once destroyed you and saying, I still choose me. There is something sacred about choosing not to run when your nervous system screams, something divine in whispering, I've got you, to the most wounded part of yourself, and meaning it. This is the resurrection they don't sing songs about. This is the rising that happens in the quiet. In the middle of the grocery store, in the middle of a conversation you used to fake your way through, in the middle of the night when no one texts back and you don't collapse into shame. This is the rebirth that doesn't require anyone's permission, because the old self, she died every time you said yes when you wanted to say no. He died every time he stayed when his soul was begging to leave. They died 1,000 small deaths just to keep being invited. And now? Now you're done dying. Now you're done shrinking. Now you're done negotiating with pain as if it still owns you. Because the truth, it never owned you. You were borrowing someone else's wound and calling it home. You were wearing someone else's fear and calling it love. You were reliving someone else's silence and calling it peace. But that silence was never peace. It was exile. And you holy, burning sovereign, you have made it back. Not to who you were before the pain, but to who you were before you believed the pain meant something about you. And now, when it comes back, as it always will, you meet it like an old friend. You don't push it away. You don't give it the keys. You just say, I know why you're here, but I am not yours anymore. Because nothing can hurt you, not truly, not deeply, once you know who you are beneath it. Not untouchable, not invincible, unwilling to abandon yourself ever again. This is it. Not the end, the beginning. Of a life where your truth is not a liability, where your body is not a battlefield, where your past is not a sentence, where your no is not a betrayal, where your yes is real, where your breath is yours, where your name is no longer a question. You are here, and you are whole, and nothing can hurt you anymore.